Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Brian from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
Oh, buckle up. What's up, guys? How are you? Welcome to Security Squawk podcast. I am your co-host, Brian, here with Andre and Randy. You guys have a nice, relaxing holiday.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So I don't think the holiday weekends are as exciting anymore as we move on in the world of cybersecurity. They're not it's like companies used to get hit on the holiday weekends. Now they get hit every weekend.
That's right.
Yeah. It's like people are probably saying to themselves, wow, like cybersecurity must not be a thing anymore. I don't hear about like holiday attacks anymore. Oh, it's because they happen all the time.
Yeah,
so,
they're not big enough to make the news hardly anymore, man. They happen so often.
Yes, sir. And that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to help companies start to understand what they can start doing to protect their employees from on the front lines from cyber criminals. And we're going to deep dive into a topic that our co-host Andre kind of just off the cuff blurted out on a show like he does and says, hey, we should do a full show on that. And here we are. We're doing a full show on that. So today we're going to go and teach you in deep dive in the ins and outs of security and awareness training programs. So we're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly with all of it. We have a bunch of questions and topics lined up to ask each other to help educate you on what a security awareness training program is, what you should be doing with it, the right way to do it, the wrong way to do it. We're going to give you the gamut today. So pay attention. This is going to be one of those episodes that people are going to file back to over the years, just like our multi-factor authentication episode. That's probably well over 2 years old at this point, but still very relevant today. And that's kind of how we structure our content. So no matter what happens, a lot of these things last over long periods of time. And that's what this episode's going to do today. But before we get into the content, remember, we do this show for free. So we ask that you please remember to pay the fee, and that fee is free. It means that we produce this content, we share it with you, we bring our expertise in hopes of educating you or enlightening you or making you or your company better in some way. In exchange for that, we simply ask that you help us grow the show in the world of digital social media. And that means simple things like clicking on the share button, clicking the like button, subscribing to our podcast if you like to listen to podcasts, or watching us on YouTube, so subscribing to us on YouTube, or just subscribing to us. Where else are we? So YouTube, and we're on Facebook, right, guys? Where else are we? I think that's it, right?
Yeah. We're streaming through our LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, so LinkedIn and Facebook, share the posts that you see, this live one that's live streaming right now. We live stream to Facebook and LinkedIn. All these little things help other people find this content, help other people get educated, and help other people learn the skinny on cybersecurity, current events, how it impacts you, and what you can start doing to protect yourself. So anything you guys want to add to the show intro before we jump into the topic?
Nope.
All right.
Well, I mean, kind of. I like to say it's free as in free beer, not free as in cheap.
Randy likes beer. Did you drink any beer on Memorial Day, Randy?
My wife and I had one on Sunday night.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't drink anymore, so I didn't have any. So here we go. I'm in Andre doesn't drink either, right, Andre?
Once in a while, but for the most part, no.
Gotcha. All right, guys, let's dive into it. So, goal for the show, I'll just remind the guys, we talked about it in the green room. We're not going to, unlike the multi-factor authentication episode where we literally reviewed products and gave opinions on different multi-factor authentication products. We're not going to do that today. We might mention some by mistake. In no way, shape, or form is that an endorsement or acknowledgement that we use these products in our company in any way. There are a few popular ones out there, and one might slip through here and there. But other than that, we're going to try to remain as product agnostic as we can. Generally speaking, we're going to call the ones you can buy as the out, or they're the boxed version of security and awareness training. Meaning, if we say the word out of the box, it means that you can buy it. It's like software. You can go and buy it. You can order it, and you get these training videos delivered to your wherever, your email. You log in somewhere, you get them like that. Those are out of the box, and then there's more custom ones. So that's the difference as you hear us talking today. But as we get into it, guys, let's talk about what is security and awareness training? Like, what is it? Why should people care? Help people understand if they don't even know what this thing is that I'm mentioning, security and awareness training. What is it?
I mean, it's a lot of things. You could almost talk about what it's not. Just kidding. But it's a lot of things. Basically, the idea, though, is that you can account in cybersecurity, you can account for your data, going to the right people. You can count for your data being backed up. You can account for all kinds of little things we're watching for on your machine. The hardest thing to account for is the people, because people ultimately can click on an email that could have a link for a process that's an unknown process from a security standpoint that then creates a chain of events that lead to you getting malware. So the purpose of training is to help make the people aware of situations where they can fall victim, like how to analyze an email, how to not get social engineered. We'll go into that in a little bit, I know, but raise that awareness so they're less likely to be the ones that fall victim.
Yeah, us IT folks, we can make sure you have the latest and the greatest tools and firewalls and antivirus. But one thing we can't control is the people. And statistics says by 2025, human error will be the cause of 95% of cyber breaches.
Yeah, we were at a convention in Nashville. I'm not sure if y'all were in person or live, but they interviewed the head of like cybersecurity investigation or whatever there in Nashville, I believe is where he was from. Quite a dynamic guy. It was very interesting. He said their estimates are about 95% of all like cybersecurity breaches start with an email. They start with some kind of an email. That's what, takes that vulnerability, that compromise. That's what opens it up and starts making it into something that is, turns into a breach. So,
Andre, I missed what you said at the very end when you mentioned that statistic. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, sure. So Cybersecurity Ventures predicts that by 2025, human error will be the cause of 95% of cybersecurity breaches.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the things that I am very aware of when it comes to human error, a lot of people, and I just want to provide context to this, a lot of people think human error is like clicking on an email or something like that, or clicking on a bad link on a website or something. Human error can also include not doing something from an IT standpoint. It can also mean like not patching, right? That is also considered human error. So you're not wrong. I think we're going to get to the point where AI is going to get so good, technology is going to get so good that the only way to hack a system is to hack a person first, right? Trick the person and then take advantage of the vulnerability in the system by tricking the person. I think you're definitely on the right path there. So,
but just going back to that human error, I don't know if you guys remember when you would order from Dell, and if you're ordering like a server back then, and when you were building the server, there were certain things that they would allow you to put into the components, like into the shopping cart, and it would come up with an error message saying, "Hey, this wouldn't match with this. Like this drive wouldn't match with this processor." But when we're setting up, something on the Microsoft backend or firewall, there's really nothing to say as you're going through. Is like, hey, you didn't turn on MFA. This is either against your company policy or this is just not best practice. There's no pop-up that actually will not let you save without making sure that you do something before.
Andre, you might have to move closer to your mic. Your volume is very very high and very low. It's not consistent.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So we know what security awareness training is, right? So it's what companies need to deliver in order to kind of protect what we were talking about, that human element, that employee from getting tricked into leading to a cyber attack. So let's dig into it a little bit now that we've educated people on kind of what a security awareness training is. What do you guys think are the characteristics of an effective security and awareness training program? I mean, because look, you can do security awareness training, and you could do, what we see out there sometimes where we see companies do it maybe every once a year. So we even see some companies where they do it like once every 2 years. And, because maybe they just don't think about it, or maybe they're not required to, and they just think like everyone bringing a guy in every once in a while to talk to everybody is good enough. So what do you guys think? What do you think are the components or characteristics of a good security and awareness training program? And why would you say that, if you were going to recommend one, why it should have that?
So I'm not going to say every once a year, once a quarter. I'm going to say culture. The culture has to be ingrained. It's not just a once a year someone comes in. It's when you're having your manager's meeting and, IT pops a message to say, hey, last month MGM got hacked and it was a 10-minute phone call that caused all of this issues. And you just put that message there that says, be careful, MGM just got hacked and it was because of a 10-minute phone call. Be careful if someone's calling to say their IT. So I think you got to just ingrain it on a I don't want to say daily, but on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and that culture, he's right. You're right on the money there, Andre. That culture has to really permeate from the top, permeate from the bottom. It has really got to be something that's considered important. One of my employees recently met with like the right-hand person at a company, and they basically said, oh, we don't need this cybersecurity training. It's overkill. And that's like literally the exact opposite. And so I've got on my little list of to-dos, I'm going to take the CEO out to lunch and, have a little heart-to-heart with him about this and say, look, this is a big deal. It's got to happen. So that may be the most important aspect of all of them, Brian, is that you've created a culture in your company where it's normal to do. We're not perfect at my company, but in our company chat, people will get phishing emails and they'll take screenshots and post it in our company chat and say, hey, I just got this. We'll talk about why it's good from why it was tricky, and kind of pick it apart and then warn each other about it. That's the kind of culture, the kind of things that Andre's talking about.
Yeah, culture is definitely a big one. I'll bounce it back to you here in a minute, Randy, for your characteristic that you're going to talk about. But one of the things too that I'll add to culture is it's very much what's good for the goose, right? If management and the CEO and top level are do what I say, not what I do type of attitude, the chances of your employees actually following through with what you're training them are slim to none. So it's got to be a top-down approach. Management has to follow the rules just like employees. There can't be exceptions with, hey, the CEO, doesn't have to do this, gets certain rights to this, gets more access, just because he's a CEO, not because his job requires it. These are things that, also are part of the culture of the organization. And when you do these things and they go against what you're teaching your employees, it makes it a lot harder for that culture to permeate and for your employees to buy into it. So good point there, Andre. So Randy, what are some things that you like to see in security awareness training programs that you think are important?
Well, I'll go ahead and just grab the lowest hanging fruit. It's actually touching the ground. It's hanging so low right now. And that is training employees how to spot a phishing email, because, FBI guy from Nashville, I think he might've said 93% of all breaches that we're seeing start with an email. The quote that Andre just mentioned a minute ago about how 95% of all breaches will be caused by human error by 2025. That said, employees really need to know how to spot phishing emails, and you can pick them apart. They do come sometimes at the absolute wrong time. So you do phish testing to train people for it, so they're not expecting a check to be dropped off at their house and they get a phish that actually says, hey, I found this check, or something like that. And then I would also throw in there not just phishing, but also schmishing. I can barely say it, but that's using phish testing over SMS. In a recent,
what about phishing?
What's that?
What about phishing?
Yeah, and well, we can talk about that one as well.
And that'll. Do you want to comment on before I talk, Andre? Do you want to comment on Randy's thought there with phishing training? You good?
No, we're good. He said it good.
So I'm just going to add to kind of what you guys are both saying, but on top of it, Randy, with the different types of trainings that are out there, my big thing and one characteristic that I would look for in a security awareness training program is one that is providing my employees with the most relevant information and most up-to-date information, because some of these trainings can get stale. And if you're not if you're teaching people how to spot a Nigerian prince email today, I guarantee you, you have one of those training programs that I'm talking about, because those emails don't even exist anymore, especially with AI. And with AI, things and tactics are going to change so quickly here in the future that it's really important for those security awareness trainings to highlight the things that hackers and cyber criminals are using today. And that requires them to update their training content if you're going to buy one of those out-of-the-box solutions. So,
and with elections coming, I get maybe three texts a day. And it's about either who do you want to vote for, do a survey, which I never click on. And then also there's another one, the healthcare, where, to try to get like lower healthcare quotes. And I'm always having to report it as junk on my cell phone.
Yeah, I somehow got lucky, Andre. I don't even know what I did, but something on my phone with AT&T, who's my provider, all that stuff. I do get it, but I get what I do receive the same number of texts about, I would say, but all of mine end up in spam, and it's great. I don't even see them. It goes right in there. I don't even get an alert, but I can go in there and I can look. I didn't even know I was getting these. I went in and looked one day because I got some random weird text from some number, and it was like, hey, Mike, do you want to hang out today? And I was like, that went to spam. And then I went and looked at it because I didn't see it in I'm like, that could have spam. And I did. And I went and looked, and then I saw all these political ones like you're talking about in my spam. So
where do you go for that? Because I've never even heard of
AT&T?
No.
Oh, I have AT&T Active Armor on my devices, so
Okay.
that's like their security. So I think it's them doing it.
Got it.
So let's just jump kind of gears here a little bit and change gears and talk about a little bit deeper into security awareness training programs. And if anybody has any comments or questions about this and you're watching live, feel free to drop them in the wherever you're watching us. We should see those come through. So talking about security awareness training, and I mentioned the word out of the box solution a couple times. And out of the box solutions tend to be exactly that, out of the box, kind of like one size fits all. So let's kind of briefly touch on, is one size fits all the right approach for organizations? And, obviously, if I'm asking the question, I'm bringing this up, probably not. So, but in your mind, can there be a one size fits all? And if not, then what's different across these organizations, larger organizations versus smaller organizations, or even organizations in different industries? How might something like this impact what they're doing?
I mean, definitely. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll go after you.
Yeah, definitely one size fits all does not work. You have to use those solutions as a tool. So if you're looking for a way to maybe send an email weekly to your staff, then okay, fine, use that. But there's a lot of things within the company that may be different, or you may have special rules such as USB flash drive policy, or when users are working from home. And that's when you need to now make sure that they're aware of these type of rules.
Yeah, I was going to say the software that we use starts off when you're setting up a new customer, starts off asking some questions about who they are, what they do, this kind of stuff. And then do you need compliance for like HIPAA? Do you need compliance for like PCI and several other things like that? I would say on one side of that coin, Brian, something's better than nothing. And there are some things that are going to be the same across almost every customer or use case. But then there's that extra like 25 to 40%, which would be focused on their specific use case, their specific industry. So definitely that would be the bigger yes of those two sides of the coin.
And then in my mind, like what comes to mind for me with this stuff is what we see is two things especially for compliance driven companies in industries that might have compliance, or you just might have compliance because of contracts that you're signing. It might not be industry regulated. But sometimes we see this, especially less so with industry regulated companies and more so with companies that are regulated by contracts, that you might have to provide training about ethics or other things that touch on data security. Maybe the contracting process for that organization might also be part of what you need to train your employees on. So, when you're doing a training and awareness program, yes, the focus should be on data security, but there may be other things that you have to touch on where it makes sense just to do it in this one program versus have all these different programs set up. So in other words, you really got to take a look at whether or not the out of the box solution or the off the shelf solution really checks the box for your organization. And do a little bit of legwork and research to figure out, like, does your organization have, its own, rules and regulations or policies that it wants to roll out and enforce? Well, you can do that through something like a security and awareness training program. Same thing with industry regulations. If you want to make your employees aware of what the industry regulations are, and it may not necessarily be cybersecurity related, but as part of it, you're going to deliver cybersecurity training as well, because it's related to it, but there's other things that it touches on. That's an absolute 100% thing. It's not just about data. Sometimes, a lot of times, you have to train on ethics and other things that are related to cybersecurity, but not specifically data security. So.
Yeah, we always have when we do our trainings, then we have our client talk about transfer of funds policy.
There you go.
It's clear. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, it's financial security there, right? But, we've seen it in regulated industries where how to employees at a large organization, how they interact with one another, needs to be stipulated, and it needs to be like, hey, like, if two people in these roles have a personal relationship, then that's a conflict of interest, right? And these things have to be trained upon and brought about, especially when you're doing things like data security and data compliance, right? If I'm an internal auditor for a company and I have a relationship with the IT director, well, that's a conflict of interest, right? That auditor shouldn't be doing that audit if they have a personal relationship with an IT director. And I'm sure we can, sit here and ponder and discuss why that is, but it probably makes a lot of sense if the person whose work is being checked for accuracy isn't being done by his wife, brother, girlfriend, sister, cousin, what have you, roommate, because things can be passed and overlooked because of that relationship, and the integrity of what you're doing becomes in question. And you think I might be crazy by talking like this, because it's like, yeah, well, what are the chances of that happening? We see it happening a lot. We see it where things happen, events happen, and you look around and you find out the details of it, and you find out that somebody skipped a step or overlooked something because it was their friend, or it was it was their own work that they were checking, so to speak. So, thoughts on this, guys? Randy has lots of thoughts. So we kind of touched on, various aspects of security and awareness training. So let's just get into the skinny of it. If you're going to advise a client on what they should put in place, what would you say are the most effective methods for delivering security and awareness training? So let's start with it. And we'll go quick here. How frequently should security and awareness training sessions be held, in your opinion? Okay.
Personally, I think weekly at the very, very least.
Weekly.
Yes. Like there ought to be something that goes out to raise their awareness, which, by the way, while I'm thinking about it, our informally adopted grandson was born in a hospital. And, we always, if the three of us are at a hospital, we always look to see if they're using like Windows XP, if they have a screensaver, all this jazz, if they auto lock. Well, this hospital, when it locked, it had up the cybersecurity tip for the week on their screensaver, which I thought was awesome. I'm like, wow, I've never seen anything at a hospital that great. So from a technology standpoint, at least. So, but yeah, I would definitely say weekly. Like it, if you're talking about culture, you're talking about awareness, it needs to be a part of what you do it weekly.
I like that because it kind of reminds me like with the construction companies when they put safety first, and it's like a mind thing for them to always think about safety first. So I like that idea, what they did with the screensaver.
So where are you at? You're at weekly too, Andre?
Yes, weekly for something automated. And when someone does check a box, and if they're, if let's just say, for example, in a quarter, when I say check a box, I mean clicked on the phishing email. And in a quarter, we actually then look at that, and then we have like a side 10-minute conversation with that person. We don't even tell the manager. They get the reports too, but we just open up a ticket and say, hey, Susie from accounting, let's just spend 10 minutes with her. Let's just go over some of these things. Because at the end of the day, if they click on a phishing email, although it's the company, the customer's problem, but it's still us. It's still going to be like, oh my, it's going to be our headache. So
Yeah.
we rather just be proactive in that.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, I would also recommend weekly because 52 trainings a week is better than 26. In practicality, we get a lot of pushback on weekly. Because like you said, Andre, when we're sitting down and having those discussions, especially bigger organizations, we see this with where the numbers start to drop significantly in terms of who's completing the trainings. And then the discussion really starts to be had as to whether they want, 5 minutes is 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes times 10 people, right, is 50 minutes to a company, right? And lost productivity, if you want to look at it that way. I would highly suggest you change your perspective on that and look at it as an investment into your, security and protecting data, and stop looking at it as like lost productivity. But that's how companies kind of view it sometimes when we talk to them. That's an hour a week, right? 50 10 employees, 5 times 5, that's an hour a week of lost productivity for that company. And now you times that by 200 employees at 5 minutes a pop. That number starts to run up pretty quickly. So it's all on how you view it, 100%, in my opinion, right? I think like the perspective needs to change, culture needs to change. It all starts there, right? If you have a culture around this, you would see that cost as not that much of an expense in the name of security. If it leads to you not having to deal with ransomware or some other kind of attack. But yeah, I agree with you guys. Weekly is where it should be at, especially if you're doing these short ones. I like the combination that Andre suggested with maybe a little bit of a custom, more extended training that happens maybe once a quarter or twice a year, once a year, depending on the size of your organization. And those companies that are out there saying a week is too much, we want less. Well, that's introducing risk into your business, right? And
Right.
you look at it as a cost. You're just talking yourself out of doing cybersecurity the right way. So.
Yeah, I was going to say ours has like a yearly certification to where there's a basic cybersecurity certification. It takes about 20 minutes to read it, take the quiz. There's a HIPAA one. Since we deal with medical offices, we have our employees take that one as well, and they automatically re-up every year. So you get them done, you have to redo that. So that takes about 45 minutes, and then you've got the weekly 5-minute deals, and that's separate though from the phishing training. The phishing training is, they have their own trainings if you fall for them.
So you mentioned kind of tracking by doing phishing, and that this is one of the big things that we talk about with companies all the time. It's like, you can roll this out, but you got to have a way to show that it's actually being done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sending an email to somebody and saying, take this training, doesn't really fly when it comes to a lot of the regulations that are out there. It has to be more than that. There has to be a way that you're seeing that people are not only clicking on it, watching the training, taking the training, reading the training, whatever format it's delivered in. But you gotta, like, I think a lot of companies back in the day that didn't have like the out-of-the-box solution, they'd have like, I know back when I worked for the Navy before I started my company, we would have to go to a big auditorium and sign in on a sheet of paper. I mean, this was back in like 99 through 2004, right? I'm sure there's other ways of doing it similarly electronically, right? You swipe in, you badge in, but you're badging in to say that you took this training. That's how a lot of CEP is done at like conventions and stuff. You have to swipe your badge, you get into the room, and then you get credit for it. You got to kind of figure that out, right? So how are ways that you see businesses can comply with these training programs? What are ways that they can show that they're complying? Andre and then Randy.
Well, whatever out-of-the-box solution you're using, they should have a tracking to say that they, obviously the email got there, and then it tells if they clicked on the link or not. And then for those like micro trainings where it's a more video interactive, the same thing. There should be a something you can export to prove that this person took it, and if they didn't take it, that's even the better, because then you can give it to the manager for them to drop the hammer on them.
Yeah, and I would add to that. We always try to pick a champion at a business who's like the champion for this. But everything needs to be automated as much as possible. If you have a video to watch, you ought to be getting a reminder about it until you watch it, then it goes away. If you need to take fish training, like everything as much as possible should be automated to take out human error, to take out, like you don't want to have to keep up with, who's done what or whatever. You don't want to have to be the person who's always reminding them, although it doesn't, a nudge doesn't hurt, but where it's just all being handled by the software.
Yeah, and there should also be a positive aspect to this to ensure compliance, right? You don't always want to be policing this. You want to encourage people to be proactive. So thinking of ways to reward people or recognize people who are doing the right thing is also a really great way to make sure that your engagement and compliance with the program is happening. So maybe everybody who gets, who completes it gets entered to win, a $50 gift card or $100 gift card, right? You give away one every month or something along those lines. Just to, when people get those emails, they think to themselves like, oh, if I just spend 5 minutes taking this training, I have a chance to win $100, right? And, I think people will do that. Simple stuff like that can make a big difference in whether people comply with it or just, ignore the email. So let's wrap this up here. We'll bounce it right to Andre since he's got to run. So talking about security awareness training, I mentioned it earlier when I said, hey, the information you should be getting in your program should be relevant. So let's look ahead a little bit at emerging threats, because we know cybersecurity is always going to have emerging threats, and specifically to security awareness training programs and companies modernizing their program for the future. What should companies start to think about? Whether they use an out-of-the-box solution or they go hybrid or they go fully custom. What should companies think about for the future as they prepare and look ahead, and what they should be planning for with their security awareness training program? Because I think we all agree that, continuing to do the same old probably means in a couple of years, you're going to be, behind the times, as I mentioned earlier. So Andre, what is an emerging threat a company should be considering when it comes to security awareness training? Maybe something it should have, or something companies might want to look at doing.
Not sure if this is the angle you're getting at, but for me, I'm looking at not just the security side as far as getting videos, but the training as far as, okay, what type of password policy are we going to have? What is going to be our work from home policy? Things like that, because yes, as we've said with the statistic, that X amount percentage is coming in through the emails, but that doesn't mean that we should be looking the other way for all of the other ways that hackers are gaining access to systems.
Right, because I think what a lot of companies are starting to learn and recognize is almost the way that they've been sold cybersecurity services. Like when I talk about cybersecurity services, I always tell companies, like, if you really want to have a good cybersecurity program, then the companies need to establish those policies first. And then the policies will dictate the tools and what you do, right? So if you say you have a password policy, then that password policy may dictate that you need a password manager, and that employees have to be trained on length of passwords and, whether they have to have special characters and stuff like that, right? That's what the training would cover, right? But what has happened up until, I think there is a shift that's currently happening with how people buy this stuff. But prior to it, people were just coming at you like, hey, I have a password manager, buy it from me. Here's what it does. There was and so companies bought all these tools with no real policy or no real culture behind what they were buying. And companies are starting to realize that they need to switch that up and drive all of this with policy. And you have to train on this stuff in order to achieve. So kudos to you, Andre, for keeping the theme and keeping it tight from culture to policy to security awareness training, because that's where it all starts.
Awesome.
And
thank you.
And I know Andre's got to hop off for an appointment, but I was going to add social engineering training, because social engineering is very difficult to catch from a tools standpoint. For example,
impossible. Your tool is not going to catch social engineering.
Right.
Yeah.
One that we saw a few times last year. In fact, I've seen some recent discussion about it. We had someone call us literally just last week. They go onto some website and some ad pops up, and the next thing you know, their computer is saying, "You are now controlled by the hackers," or whatever. You must call, Microsoft, and you call that number, and it's not real. Getting these emails that say, "Hey, thanks for using Best Buy."
Well, how about the one, or dude, I mean, sorry to cut you off, but there was that one, I don't know if we talked about it on here. It was my YouTube that I did a video on, but like that social engineering hack where they sent those phishing emails to the company, and then they called up and said, "Hey, I'm from help desk. I see you're getting a bunch of phishing emails. I'm here to help you." Like, that's social engineering. This is the stuff you need to be training your employees on. Like, hey, nobody's ever going to call you from the help desk proactively like that and ask you to remote into your computer, or it's got to be established on how something like that would go down. And hackers know that companies are behind the 8 ball in this, and they're out there coming up with these little schemes and figuring out ways to connive their way in, using simple phone calls to your employees.
Yep.
So yeah, man. So I love those two policies, and you saying that, we need to train on social engineering. And I guess I'll just wrap up the show with the obvious. You're going to have to teach on AI. You're going to have to teach a lot on AI, and you're going to have to teach your employees how to spot fake stuff generated by AI. And on top of that, you're going to start having to use AI to help you with this, right? So be on the lookout for AI tools to help.
You're right. That's a Pandora's box.
You're right, to help with some of the things that you're trying to teach your employees and things like that, right? So be interesting to see where a lot of this goes with AI, but AI is going to be a big thing that impacts not only security awareness training programs, the out-of-the-box ones, but it's also going to impact what you need to teach your employees here in the future.
Right.
So.
Right, and it's changing so fast.
Right.
Every update they do changes it. And,
right. So my point, and I guess my point with saying that is, and I should be more clear or succinct, my fear is that these out-of-the-box solutions won't be able to keep up, right, in the future, right? They won't be able to create the content quick enough and get it out there quick enough to as fast as these threats evolve. So it's going to be an interesting challenge to overtake, but doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Doesn't mean you give up hope. Keep plugging away. If you're not doing security awareness training, get it started in your organization as soon as possible.
Yep.
Randy, anything you want to add before we go?
I don't think so.
All right.
So
somebody has a question or a comment. Tony here. So do you have any suggestions on how to handle phishing, smishing, email, text outside of just deleting them? That's an interesting question. Go ahead, Randy.
Well, it would be really, really nice to have a submit this potential phishing email over to your organizational IT department or whatever, so they can say, "Congratulations, that was a phish test."
Well, certain ones have that.
Yeah, congratulations, that was a real phishing email. You passed. That would be a great thing. I would say if you have a company chat, Tony, to screenshot it. This is what we do at Tech Rescue. Take a screenshot and put it on that company chat and say, hey, I got this, guys. You know, it came to my company
Heads up.
email,
Heads up. Yeah.
company phone.
Especially those ones that come in that are like, hey, HR, ones that look like it could be something that was sent to like a lot of people in the company, right? So that's always a good idea to screenshot it and paste it in and say, hey, be on the lookout for this. Sometimes we'll get spam sent to a distribution group, right? And if we see that, we definitely take your suggestion there, Randy. We'll drop it in the teams. Just usually the same people that are on the distribution group are on that team's channel. So it's like, hey, this just got sent to the Disty group.
Yes.
Make sure you realize it's spam. That's a great idea. We have here in our company, we have a policy. If you get a spam email, you have to forward that email to a certain email address. That goes to the service and company that we use for our spam filtering, and then they analyze that email to help the engines, so to speak.
Right.
So that's what our company does with the emails. They forward them, and then they're instructed to delete them. But they get forwarded to our spam filtering service for analysis. So I would suggest that you have a way to do that. Some, like Randy said, some of them you can hit a button in your Outlook and it kind of does the same thing behind the scenes. We're just forwarding the email and sending it to a certain email address.
At the end of the day, Brian, most people at work just want to work.
Yep.
And they want crap to get in their way and slow them down. And the easier you can make it,
that's
the
right.
more likely they're going to go along with it, because they just want to get their work done. And Andre mentioned at the very beginning, he mentioned culture, and we did a cybersecurity risk assessment on a city at some point not too long ago, and we're able to get like 3 out of 5, because you mentioned a spam email and sharing it. We were able to get 3 out of 5 to click on it. And it was through their, through texting. It was smishing, because most of them didn't have protection, I guess. And then we were able to act like we were, a city employee, doing like what you said. Hey, bring this to the meeting tomorrow night. And 3 out of 5 clicked on it, which is scary. But, they're at the beginning of creating a culture, because that's really what it boils down to, is you've got to create that culture.
Yep. Got to start today, and every day get a little bit better. That's the name of the game.
Well, this is a unique window you brought up. I've not seen this before.
I figured we didn't need to be in the little boxes since it was only just me in there. So, all right. Thanks for your inputs today, Randy, Andre. I know you had to run. Thank you. I'm sure you'll listen to this later, and we'll see everyone next week. Take care, everyone. Share the show.